Welcome to the Due Diligence Podcast, where we explore how leaders make and execute their biggest decisions, from transactions to founding organizations to career pivots and beyond. This podcast is produced by Sleeping Giant Capital. We connect executive talent and capital to invest in West Michigan businesses. To learn more, visit us at sleepinggiantcapital.com or stop by our office in downtown Kalamazoo.
Hi, I am Justin Murray, and I am an executive in residence at Sleeping Giant Capital. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. My co-host Doug Lepisto and I speak with Tim Hiller, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A in Walker, Michigan. We will explore Tim's acquisition journey and the day in the life of a franchisee. We hope you enjoy our conversation.
Good to see you, by the way, Tim. Yeah. It's been a long time.
I know, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and in person.
Yes, I was going to say we were on Microsoft Teams a lot together in the Acquire course.
Yes.
So Tim, you're an author. That's one thing that we found that maybe a lot of people don't know. People know you're a football player, other things. But tell us about the book. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the 60-second version, but I was actually at I've always enjoyed writing and kind of had a blog for a while. I had, was going through a time when I was cut by the Indianapolis Colts of what's next and what other gifts and talents do I have, and what does God want me to do next, and really seeking. And part of the way I processed that was just through writing and stuff. And then I shared that with a couple people, and they were like, "Hey, you should publish it. You just post a blog or do something to just help others benefit from this." And so that began. And then I was at the HumanX Impact and Leadership Summit that they do downtown. And I met a guy there named Adrian Gostick. He's kind of a organizational behavior consultant. He's written the book, What Motivates Me, or the Carrot Principle, if you've ever read some of those management and leadership books. And we just kind of built a connection. We kept in touch. And I eventually kind of was like, "Hey, here's a link. I've been, doing a little bit of this." And he's like, "You got to get this published." And I'm like, never thought about that. So it's kind of like one of those one door opens to another. And it was just kind of a daily discipline of putting out some content that eventually became a book. So that's the short story.
I like it. Amazon, 5 stars.
I don't know about that, but it's available.
So how do you find time? How did you find time for that?
It's a great question. I'm a strengths finder junkie from our striker days and learning about that Gallup tool. So I have discipline and focus in my top 5. So for me, it's it was a schedule it, write a page every day kind of thing, or knock out it's a devotional book, so knock out a devotional every day kind of thing. And some of them are better than others, but it was truly that one a day kind of process over time, rather than I'm going to sit down and write half the thing today. It's just that daily consistency that how I did it. So.
Yeah.
And now you're at Chick-fil-A. Favorite meal at Chick-fil-A is?
Oh man,
it doesn't look like the restaurant hasn't had any impact on you.
Well, thank you. There's Tim Tisopoulos, who's kind of the outgoing, retiring chief operations officer, is try your food every day, and it's kind of a quality thing. How are you performing? How are you doing? I have to confess, I don't always do that. But just the original chicken sandwich is kind of my go-to.
That's your go-to.
It's so good. Peppermint chip shake right now.
Okay.
Limited time seasonal.
I haven't had one of those yet.
It's dangerous.
You hear some of these restaurants have the off menu, the secret menu.
Real thing.
Is is this a thing at Chick-fil-A at all? What gets made in the back that maybe we don't?
It's a good question. So a couple of things. One that is every owner operators have discretion, but frosted strawberry lemonade. Throw the strawberry in there. Is you can probably get that most places. We do serve it on the menu, even though it's not published. And it's very good. Or the frosted sunrise. So that's orange juice with some ice cream. If you're a creamsicle person, kind of mix that up.
Frosted sunrise.
Very good with breakfast. I recommend that. But our team makes all kinds of concoctions with their break meal a little bit. I've definitely seen put some nuggets in your mac and cheese with some buffalo sauce and bacon and things like that. So depends what your guilty pleasure is, I guess.
What's your favorite thing there, Doug?
I just go with the nuggets. I usually just eat my kids' nuggets, and French fries. Sometimes spicy chicken, spicy chicken sandwiches.
Just the traditional.
It's really good.
Nice. So tell us a little bit more about that journey, to now operating.
Sure.
I guess walk us through what you do now, and maybe give us the intro on what you're doing and what led you to it.
Yeah, so owner-operator within the Chick-fil-A system, owning a franchise. We're in technically Walker, Michigan, which is the western side of Kent County, west side of of Grand Rapids. And so we were there are now 5 locations. We were the 4th in Grand Rapids in that market. So if you kind of look at a map and you point out Grand Valley State University in the heart of downtown Grand Rapids, we're almost the dead midpoint at Lake Michigan Drive, which runs from downtown Grand Rapids to Grand Haven, and then Wilson Avenue, which runs north and south. So it's a busy corner and a great place to be. We opened in October of 2021. I was talking with Justin a little before we started. The process is very long and selective. There was a lot of due diligence, no pun intended, with both the franchisees process as well as Chick-fil-A's process. So for me, it took the better part of 2 years from like expression of interest and beginning the journey with them to actually, signing on the dotted line and making that happen. And then also like just the pre-work of like seeking information, talking to others, determining like, is this right for me, for our family? And so, yeah, that's kind of the high level overview, but we got open. It was right around April 1st of 2021. We found out, all right, it's official. And then construction kind of immediately began. We got after it, and we ended up opening in mid-October of 2021. So we celebrated our first birthday not that long ago, and we're about to finish our first full fiscal year. So it's been a blur, but it's been a fun ride.
So two-year process. Mm-hmm. Can you, what is that? Are there certain checkpoints along the way? Because for me, I'd be like, man, how do I know this is going to happen? So are there certain checkpoints, or what's the process, interview process, and other things that you need to go through, I guess, without, you don't have to go too deep. But.
Right. No, it's a process that starts off, a little bit automated. Chick-fil-A gets somewhere, and I don't know the updated numbers anymore, but somewhere between 80 to 100,000 expressions of interest every year. And a very small percentage of that makes it all the way through to franchise, selection and acceptance. So it's a very long process, very detailed. I think what I credit Chick-fil-A, I guess, the most to is, and this is what I always admired from afar before I got up close to it, is they just don't compromise on their values and what they stand for. All the way back to, Truett Cathy, who founded the organization. Little things from, being closed on Sunday to just the way we go about business. It just doesn't change. And I think those timeless principles really attracted me to the business. And, I think my personal purpose and some of the things I stand for really align well with what the organization stands for. And I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later, but, my wife's family and my grandfather were kind of in franchise businesses for the majority of their careers. And if you're going to go into franchising, you got to have a great partner. You got to have somebody that you're comfortable doing business with, that you're going to work hard for them, but they're also going to support you with the structure, with the framework, with research and development, things that help you be successful. And so that there's this marriage or partnership that's really effective. And I don't know of any organization that does that better than Chick-fil-A. So that really is something I feel thankful for.
Nice. What does that look like? Is that a...
on the day to day.
Yeah. Do you get up to, how does that...
So I think it starts with some of the structures that are in place. Now you have to go, you have to teach yourself to fish, and you have to go seek some of that support. But for example, we have in West Michigan, a business consultant that's dedicated to us who, she has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience from different markets that I can ping her and be like, hey, I need guidance in this area, or who's the best person to help me understand food costs better or inventory better. And then there's a whole host of dedicated consulting teams. So I'll give you an example. In 2022, in the first half of the year, we had both a kitchen throughput consulting team come out as well as a drive-through consulting team. And they were basically looking at processes, efficiencies, coaching us on how to be more lean, looking at our processes in the drive-through and how many cars we're putting through and where our bottlenecks were, how we could improve those things. They supported us. We're doing it's just interesting where we're located between both campus, and you have athletics and things happening on campus, as well as we're mileage-wise the closest store to downtown, so you have a lot of industry and healthcare in downtown Grand Rapids. We're doing, as a percentage of sales, a very high amount of catering compared to other locations. And so when the kitchen throughput team came out, they're like, hey, we have this 2-tier warmer, and we have some other equipment that we can help you kind of think differently about how you set up your catering space. So now we've got almost this store length counter with this warmer and kind of a different process flow of food, so that we can prepare catering without disrupting the operation of the store. So there's a lot of people that are just very focused in these different specialties that pretty much at your disposal as long as you look at like their capacity. So the other thing I would say is like Chick-fil-A. Last time I was in Atlanta, they're I'm not going to give away proprietary things, but they're out in the future. They're thinking about capacity solutions. They're working with our equipment vendors on like developing new things that work better and make life easier for the team. So it's really cool and reassuring to see that as a franchisee that they're out ahead of some of these issues we're experiencing and thinking about how we solve them. That's really, really cool. So
great. We were at I forget where it was. I think it was actually they were doing like you do like COVID shot drive-through, and we were just saying like we need Chick-fil-A to get out here and improve the processes because some of these you guys, we always see the line, and it's around here it's always super long, but it goes so fast, and there's probably a lot of other areas that could use that drive for better efficiencies.
I think there was like an owner operator in like South Carolina or something actually to like help the county where he's located with their COVID shop process. So yeah, it's all about efficiency. And I mean, I've definitely like learned a lot about that, but it's where you put your people, it's how you set up your process and seeing like what could slow that process down. So it's definitely like I'm not a lean Six Sigma guy, but those principles are all over the business. So
what led you? So I'm sitting with two Stryker guys, former Stryker guys, right? Yeah. And how old are you, Tim?
35.
35. 37. So you get to you're 35, 37. You've worked at Stryker, right? We're not just interviewing you, but so you're at 35. You're doing well at Stryker. What led you to take the leap of going off on your own?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think a little background is important. So if my dad's dad was a World War II veteran. He was a mechanic. And post-war, he owned a couple gas stations and then later owned a Napa Auto Parts franchise that he sold to my uncle. And so like, I remember growing up, being, 7, 8 years old on Saturday mornings, like we'd drive up to Cleveland and we'd go to the store and, sit at the counter and eat a pretzel rod and, sweep the floors a little bit. And like, that's a formative experience, right? On my, marrying my wife, Michelle, later, she's a part of the Denoyer clan here in West Michigan, right? So, Metro Toyota, Denoyer Ford in Vicksburg, Denoyer Chevrolet. And so coming into that family and watching them just do business really well and with integrity and character. And her father, Bill, was really a coach and a mentor in this process for me, as well as going through Acquire and, seeking out the counsel of other business owners, things like that. So it's in my blood a little bit, I think. But there also, I think, is this deep desire in all of us to like do work that matters. And it wasn't that the work at Stryker didn't matter. I don't think that I would be in this position without Stryker. It shaped me as a leader. It taught me, it was kind of a second MBA. It taught me business practically. I admire and respect so many people that invested in my career during that time. So I don't think I'd be here without that experience. I think for me, ultimately, it came down to there's just nothing more satisfying, in my opinion, than like when you're working so hard, you're building a vision, you're communicating that vision to the team, you're investing in leaders, and then you have a day where like you come in and you're working with them and they're doing it. Like they're carrying out the vision. I remember just a couple of days ago coming into the store about 8:39 in the morning, and usually you come in and like every now and then you see something that's like not as clean as you wanted, or and you're like wiping a table, or you're talking to somebody about something you'd like to see a little bit different. But I remember coming in and kind of like looking around. And it was like, we got it today. Like it's running smooth. Leader comes up and is like, hey, like this happened, but I took care of it, and you're like, all right, we're making progress. We're not there yet, but we're making progress. And like that's just like a really special moment for someone that's, trying to own and lead and run a business. And so it comes down to like a lot of it is people, and then like helping people achieve what they can become and get those results. And you can do that in a lot of different settings, but this has been a good move for me.
You mentioned 80 to 100,000 people that submit. I forget what you said. Expression of interest.
Sure.
So, what was maybe your strategy, or like how did you stick out? I mean, I know you're a very, very impressive guy. And you've got a lot of accomplishments.
He's a Western grad. So that's obvious.
Stryker guy, football player. Yeah, we know.
I have to share a story. One of my leaders, like jokingly, was in the kitchen, like saying, like fire up chips. So I gave him a discipline write-up. Jokingly, we filmed it and we shared it with the team. We had some fun with that one, but he doesn't say it anymore. So no, I'm just.
No, that's great. But yeah, I mean, what was the strategy? Is it, I mean, or is it so process oriented that you don't?
I tried to approach the process of like, and this is my advice to people, even like when they were like, hey, how do I get in? How do I work at Stryker? Right? Because a lot of people want to work there. It's a wonderful organization. It's like you got to be yourself and see if you fit. So like if you're coming into the process telling them what you think they want to hear, and it works out, like you're not being true to yourself, and then you're going to be unhappy later. So for me, it was really about like clearly defining like, why do I want to do this, and being able to articulate that well. And to Chick-fil-A's credit, like the interview process is long and grueling, but they're very consistent, and they almost like ask you the same stuff over and over again as you're getting to know them and they're getting to know you, because they want to see like, are you just making this up and you're like telling us a different answer every time, even if, you know, a couple months pass in the process, then we meet with you again, or we fly you down to Atlanta, and like, are you telling us different things than you told us 2 months ago? Or are you consistently who you are and doing this for the right reasons? And I give them credit. Like it's not this overly, it's long, it's grueling, but it's not this overly scientific process. It's really about consistency. And are you true to that, who you are and that mission of doing it? So for me, it was really about like getting clear myself on like why I wanted to do this. I think Acquire was great with that. I think you guys do a good job of really challenging people of like does this just seem sexy to own a business, or like, are you actually like doing it for the right reasons, and are you committed? Because there's just a fair amount of good old grit in, you know, doing something like this. So
has that been, I guess, you know, you were entrepreneurial in your sales experience at Stryker, but now you know, this is now your owner operator day to day. Like maybe what's the biggest surprise you've had, kind of transitioning from corporate America into this new life?
You know, I think you have days like at Stryker, it's like, hey, like, hey, congratulations, you got a big capital deal. I sold, you know, orthopedic power tools, primarily. It was kind of the flagship product I sold. And like, you know, it's great, you got a big deal, but like, you also have to like go unbox all those drills, right? And all those saws. And like, I mean, if you're a good service, like, and if people don't see that side of selling at Stryker, like the best reps are in there, like servicing equipment, unboxing stuff, setting up all the trays for people, running it through the sterilizer. Like you got to do that work. And this is no different. And now there are days where I jump in operations intentionally, and I help make food. I help put together catering orders. I do deliveries because I want to, sometimes because I have to in today's current climate. But part of that is for me to learn and for my team to see, like if in the business I'm in now, like if you don't have a heart to serve, like you're not going to survive, because you have to buy into the fact that like we're here to be like the world's most caring company. We're here to serve our guests with uncommon hospitality, and a younger workforce needs to see their leader like serving alongside them. Now you don't want to be a crutch to them. So there's a balance of like when you jump in and help and when you let them struggle and learn. But I think you have to be prepared to do that. If you're like, well, I want to own a business to kind of, you know, ultimately be this like absentee person. Like, yes, I want to have autonomy and not be chained to the business, but the business will be more successful if I'm involved and I understand its rhythms and I care for the people. You know, people say, well, you know, if you're in business, like nobody cares as much as you do. And there's some truth in that, but they won't care if you don't care for them. So like if they see you, you know, rolling up your sleeves with them and investing time in them and helping them through when they're struggling, then like they'll care closer to the level that you care, I think. So that's something I think is important. And like some of that comes back to like the entrepreneurial nature of like quota driven sales at Stryker, right? Like, you know, I remember, you know, upgrading some hospitals equipment, and like, I'm the one hauling out all the old stuff. I'm the one unboxing and preparing all the new stuff. Like you got to do that work to serve the customer. And so I think that mindset helps in what I'm doing now currently too. But I'm also the one now that has to like set up the structures, right? It's like, I think the cool part about Chick-fil-A doing a grand opening, as hard as it is, and you have to hire 120 people off the street and like do all this stuff, is I also have to create like the organizational structure and like the roles and responsibilities. There's lots of ways to do that. You can talk to other people about how they do it, but it's this balance of like, you are acquiring a business through a franchise process, but then you also have to like, it's a startup too. And you have to set up those structures from day one of who owns what and who's responsible for what and what is the hierarchy of the team and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into that, but I need to like build that structure and remove roadblocks so the team can succeed within it. So
I'd love to drill into the culture piece, because you mentioned it twice now. On Chick-fil-A's values, and so different than starting a company. This is a new open, but you've got a culture that you're expected to bring to bear on that organization. So it's similar to if you're going to become owner operator of an existing company. So how do you think about that translation process of taking what Chick-fil-A is expecting of you in terms of a culture? Right. You still have autonomy as the owner operator. How do you bring that to life in a culture?
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a few different ways. So like Chick-fil-A has like a corporate purpose statement and corporate values. And I think a lot of it started with like me and my own kind of heartbeat. So like Chick-fil-A's corporate purpose statement is to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us, and to have a positive impact on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. Now, I probably wouldn't word it that way, but when I think about my own personal purpose, like that kind of is why I think I exist, to do those things, to be a good steward of what's entrusted to me. My faith is important to me. That's not the only reason I do this, but I believe that, things are on loan to us for a season in our life, and I got to have something to show for that, right? And care for those things. And I want to make a positive impact on everybody I come in contact with. So like, I'm trying to do what they're trying to do. So that, I think it started there, but then we do kind of have a local translation of the purpose. So like our purpose statement in Walker is to make every life we touch better. And it's intentional about every life, because it's not just every guest, it's like the team. Like we want to create that positive environment in the team. And then our vision statement is to be the highlight of every guest day, right? So, Doug, you come home and your wife's like, hey, like, how was your day today? And you're like, hey, I went to Chick-fil-A with Idris Rashid on Westnedge, and like, man, the service was fast, the food was great. Like, and we want to earn our way into that conversation in people's lives. And then we have like a set of values that spell the word RISE. So we talk about being reliable, industrious. We talk about service and excellence. It's like our 4 values. And we've got them on the wall. We don't want them to just be words on the wall, but we talk about that all the time. And one of the ways that I try to make that live out is I attempt to I need to make a video for the days I can't make it, but I would say 90%, I go to almost every single new hire orientation. And I talk about the purpose, the vision, the values, and they have like a slide that Anna on our team made that is like me, just quick bio. And I do that at every single orientation. I talk about purpose, vision, values, and myself and my family. And I do that so they know I'm human, that I'm there, that even if they don't always see me, like they can approach me, they can build a relationship with me, and they understand like what we're about. And then it's very clear we do, and there is some turnover in our industry, right? And we have young people, we have, seasonal college kids, we have different things like that. But we do that so the expectations are really clear and the standards are really clear. And then we do like a 30-day like training process with a 30-day review. And if you're not meeting expectations at 30 days, it gives both of us the ability to say, this isn't working, we can part ways. They can't say that they didn't know, because we talked about it, right? So that's how we try to set the foundation for culture. And then it kind of comes out like every single day, and just like that, like driving of that culture through our leaders. I try to have 6 to 8 one-on-ones a week for 30 minutes with like kind of our top leaders. And Kristen, my assistant, like schedules those for me, and we meet and we talk about the financials. We talk about what could have gone better last month. We talk about personal development, and we're not perfect because the business can get crazy and sometimes we miss that rhythm, but as much as we can, we try to like protect that time and invest in them, because they've really got to like help me drive the results and carry that out. So I'm pretty hands-on, but I just feel like that's really important. So
in those first 30 days that you mentioned, is that really getting, so Chick-fil-A is famous for, my pleasure and right, and certain I guess lingo, as well as just when you show up to a store, you just expect certain level of service. So is that really that first 30 days? There's some corporate driven things, but also some things that you're expecting at your.
It's a blend, right? So like we, Chick-fil-A has like a, kind of a e-learning, learning management system platform that we get access to, which is great because all the resources are there. We take that then and we kind of create our own courses within it for the first 6 days. So like if you come in, you're like, hey, I'm going to work in the drive-thru, which we'd love to have you come work in the drive-thru sometime. But you're going to get hired. You're going to go through new hire orientation. You're going to be handed that 30-day checklist. We believe, you own your own development. So that checklist is on you to complete by 30 days. And we also offer a small, like a pay bump at 30 days, and you're going to get that 30-day review. So if you don't get it done by 30 days, you're not getting paid more. And if you don't get it done by 30 days, then we're not going to be able to complete your review. So you're going to kind of stay at your training wage. And we have like 6 training shifts. They're partnered up with a certified trainer, and they're basically going to like learn from that learning management system. Then they're going to go do what they just learned, buddied up, hip to hip with a certified trainer. And then they kind of do like a debrief, and we progress them through that training process. And so like that 30-day checklist is kind of our curating of the resources available to us, if that makes sense. So that they're learning the language of hospitality, as you referred to. Chick-fil-A has this kind of core 4. They talk about of like how you create a moment with a guest, how you interact with them. We have kind of a guest recovery model when someone's frustrated. So we walk through that, as well as just how to do the basic positions, of making drinks or milkshakes or bagging. So
why?
My pleasure. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And then I just think more around like, the experience of Chick-fil-A is like not. You can go. Anybody can go experience it, right? It's kind of like going to Disney, and you can go see what's going on. But
right.
I'm just so curious on. I mean, there are many other quick service restaurants and fast casual, and no one can do this or has been able to replicate. And so does it go back to the mission, or does it go like, how does
That's
this?
a great question. So let me
continue. Yeah.
This will seem like a tangent, but it'll make sense. Like when I was at Stryker, I worked in what we called the customer experience center, and like worked the call center and customer service. I went to the Disney Institute and took one of their courses on great customer service. And, my favorite like Walt Disney story is he hated like when there was trash in the park. So he did this study where like he removed trash cans for a day, and then he gave out free candy like at the entry. And then he had people with clipboards counting how many steps it took Justin from the moment he finished his candy bar to the moment he dropped the paper. And the average across the parks was 27 steps. So in every Disney park all over the world, there's a trash can every 27 paces. Right. And so the point of that story is like, it's a designed experience, and that's what Chick-fil-A is about. It's a designed experience. So, Truett Cathy, the founder years ago, like did some consulting and work with like the Ritz-Carlton, and they said my pleasure. So it wasn't necessarily original to him, but he loved that idea of the Ritz always says, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And it gives that dignity to like, the bellhop. It gives that dignity to the cleaning person. And so like, I've seen the video like for years at our national conference. He was like, when the guest says thank you, what do you say? And everybody's like, my pleasure, but it's the expectation that it is a joy to serve. It is our pleasure to refill your beverage. It is our pleasure to go get you another Chick-fil-A sauce. And I think that's what's valuable about, even if it has its headaches of like teaching that to young people, is like that heart to serve. Like if you want to be successful in this world that is now very self-centered with social media and different things, like you've got to be able to put the needs of others ahead of yourself if you want to make an impact. I think that's just really important, and something I hope my kids can learn. But that's the root of it, And so a lot of it, it's training, it's mindset, it's coaching. I also think Chick-fil-A attracts I think you attract what you are. You get the people you deserve. It's an old adage, but I think it's true. And I think what we stand for, our values, being closed on Sunday, the way that we attempt to do, we're not perfect, but the way we attempt to do business tends to attract the type of employee that wants to be a part of something like that. And we're in the position now, thankfully, there's some wood to knock on. Our staffing is pretty good. We feel, not every Chick-fil-A is, and I feel blessed to be in the position we're in. So we can be selective. I interviewed a kid that I really liked the other day, but like, he wasn't quite up to what we want, and I think I told him, I was like, apply again in a year, but we can be a little bit more selective because we are trying to protect and improve what we're building. So
goes back to culture wins, it's like, this is similar when we were at Stryker, right? It's like, well, how are you winning deals? How are you doing this? How are you doing that? And I mean, it does come, it's like, in the end, how much different are all these devices? They're not that much different, but
service.
It's the people and the service and the culture surrounding that ends up winning.
And some of those principles,
time and again,
some of those principles still apply. I look at like Grand Valley State football. Like we've done a lot with them this year. We did concessions at the stadium, and we do a lot of catering for the home and away teams and things like that. And I just tell their football operations guys, like, whatever you need, you call me. And so like, I'm not always the one putting in the order, delivering the order, preparing the order, but he contacts me and I'm like, yep, I gotcha. And then I, hey, can you put this in? And I text him a picture of their receipt, but I want him to have that. Like I can call Tim anytime and I get whatever I need. But that dates back to some of my Striker sales days, right? Of like, Robin, the equipment manager, calls me at 6 a.m. is like, hey, this is down. I'll be like, hey, no problem. I'll be there in an hour or 30 minutes with what you need for the surgery, and like that's how you earn trust in that industry. And I think that's just, it's good business.
What's the average tenure of folks on your team?
That's a great question. So, we do have a turnover rate right now, which actually is for the industry is like relatively low. We're somewhere between like, I think we just did an employee engagement survey. I think we were around like 47, 48%. So you do talk about like half the team turning over like in a year. Now that has a lot of its challenges, right? Because some of it is, that
was my question. Is because in the Striker example, it's you build the culture and you have some folks become the keepers and they continue to do it. You're trying to do it, but it's just you. Yes. And now you've got that constant churn. So how do you solve for that?
Yeah, I think so. There, and some of it you can control and some of it you can't, right? So I think like I remember early on feeling like really scared about that. And I've had to get to the point where I've had to accept like this will happen. But the important thing is investing in the right leaders, taking really good care of them, and they have to be keepers of culture with me. So I do think if you look at like our top leadership, 95% of them have been there since grand opening. Anna, who I talked about earlier, that like leads all our onboarding efforts, like she's been there since grand opening. So the goal, is that now when there is turnover, it's a few people here and there, it's pockets, and we take good care of our leaders, and the whole team for that matter. But so that's where like training becomes really important. Process and systems become really important. We definitely had conversations where someone on the team is like, I just want to do that myself. I'll take that over. I'll do it. And it's like, yeah, but what if you're sick? What if you're on vacation? What if you leave? Systems run the business, not just people run the systems, but systems run the business. So like, I'm still learning that. I think there's still a couple of things that like we're maybe, I look at like inventory. I think we're a little too dependent on like one or two people with our inventory and our ordering. And so like that's good, but that introduces risk into the business. So we've got to get them to share their knowledge. We've got to get them to train others. We talk a lot about, it's kind of a football thing, but like 3 deep, like can we get to like 3 deep in all our key positions? Like we have 3 quarterbacks we feel good about putting on the field. Can we do that with different areas of the restaurant or different areas of the business? So it's a journey. It's a work in progress. It's a tough environment, labor-wise to do some of that, but I think you have to be thinking that way as an owner.
So the upward mobility. So what people on your team, leaders on your team, are they looking to own new locations? Are they looking to get on some of these consulting teams you mentioned, or how do you keep them at Chick-fil-A?
Sure. So I think one of the things we talk about is like helping them understand like there are a lot of opportunities that they're probably not thinking even broadly enough of what they could do if they want to go, like if they're open to relocation, if they want to go work in Atlanta or work in field service or things like that. Like there's a lot of those type of opportunities. Our business consultant before our current one used to say like the best stores have a purpose and a path, which is kind of what you're hinting at, right? So for us, we do have something. It's posted like pretty large poster we have in our break room, and we call it our growth path. And so it basically kind of maps out. It has like on the left kind of like roles from like a new hire all the way to executive director. And then it has like a QR code they can scan that actually takes them to like a job description example from that level that's like on our Google Drive and stuff. And then it's got kind of like a checklist on the right of if you want to get to this level, like what do you need to do? And we have some books they should read or a podcast. We have some like checklists that they need to like complete in order to be like a shift leader or a manager or things like that. And the reason for doing it that way is, and I wasn't necessarily an advocate of this when we started, but the reason for that is that it's self-paced, right? So we do have kids that maybe they're, I can think of, one of our really strong leaders in the front of house. She just got into nursing school at Grand Valley, but she's got a lot on her plate. She's taking organic chemistry and she's doing hard things, but she's also like helping us lead training, and she's leading shifts and, managing people, and that's a lot. But when I hand her a training checklist, if she wants to blow through it in 2 weeks and get it done, she can, if she has the capacity, or if it takes her 3 months, that's fine too. The important thing is that we're telling her like you have potential and we're investing in you and we're giving you this resource to prepare yourself for growth. So we do have kind of different levels from like a new hire to doing that 30-day review. Now you're a team member. We have a training certification process. So like you can become a certified trainer. You get paid a little more to do that. You help all new hires. We have both area and team leads. And so an area lead I think of as like a leader of process. One of the things that I was passionate about at Stryker is I felt like everybody who wanted to grow and advance is like, well, I got to lead people. And it's like, if I take a great design engineer and I make them like an engineering manager, the design team got weaker because we lost a really talented person. And if they're not wired to lead people, now the engineering team also got weaker because I've disengaged 6 people under my leadership because I probably shouldn't be leading people. So we created a course called Exploring Management to think about like, hey, let's try managing people on for size and see if this is a good fit for, 2 or 3 months, do some case studies, do some mock interviewing. So we have area and team leads, and the principle behind that is like, hey, like you can still be a leader here and not necessarily like manage people, whereas our team leads are like leading shifts and they are responsible for several people at a time. And then we have kind of managers, directors, and executive directors. So we have like kind of these layers. We have a growth path and a process we're trying to follow, and just to show people like there is room to grow here. But then like you can also go do grand openings. You can kind of get hired by corporate as like a field trainer, and if a store opens in Texas and we have capacity and you get the email invite, like go do a grand opening for a week or 2 and stay in a hotel and meet new people and do that. We have 2 of our leaders currently that think they want to be owner operators and they're thinking about that. And so, when they get to that point where they're ready, it's like, do we express interest and go right into it? Or maybe do we go do a program Chick-fil-A is well known for called the Leadership Development Program, where they are a corporate staff member, but the first year of that program, you're what's called an interim manager. So you kind of come in, let's say an operator, retires or passes away or relocates. That store doesn't have an owner yet. And so they come in and lead the store. So that's a year of the program. The other year of the program, they call it a GOS or a grand opening supervisor. So they travel around and open stores. And so it's a really neat developmental program. It's a lot of time on the road, but there's a very high placement into like franchise ownership from that program. So those are like viable paths for people that are thinking about, hey, I want to do this myself. So we're just, my job is to try to help them get there and think about that.
That's great. I love purpose and a path. I like that. It's very simple, but I think that's what everyone's kind of looking for, right?
Totally. Yeah.
That's great. Future growth. What do you think for you? Is it more stores? Is it other franchise? I mean, I don't even know if you're able to get into other franchises.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A really wants to have your focus. So that wouldn't be an option for me, but I would love to grow with Chick-fil-A. And right now it's about doing the best we can with what we have and showing them that we're growing and improving and getting more and more capable and retaining our leaders and growing the business where we are. So our kind of theme as we kind of build our strategy for 2023 was like refine the foundation is kind of our phrase. So we got our leaders like a little kind of like a coaster, but like a brick as like a foundation, and says refine our foundation on it. And so we're thinking about like, hey, like how do we like take on in this environment, like how do we take on healthy growth? So it's not about, hey, we're going to do all these new sales channels and our own delivery and curbside and all these things. Like, can we do more with what we have? So more cars in the drive-through, expand our partnership with Grand Valley, grow catering. Like, can we grow within the channels we have? And so we've set goals around that and stuff. So that's kind of what we're focused on now. I think longer term, Grand Rapids is definitely a growth market. Michigan is a growth area for Chick-fil-A. So you're going to see a lot more investment in both West Michigan as well as Detroit is a underserved market right now. So yeah, I would love to have the opportunity to keep growing within the system. And, there's different ways that could look, whether it's things on campus or another freestanding location or whatever. But right now we got to do the best we can with what we have. And, in the future, maybe that'll be in the cards. So.
What's been the, maybe stepping back from everything we've talked about, like what's been the surprise? What's been the thing that you are surprised about being an owner operator that you wouldn't have anticipated or people would find surprising?
Yeah, I think, boy, there's a lot to unpack there. I think there's definitely been parts of this that I've underestimated, if I'm humble and vulnerable. I think you come into it and you think it'll maybe be a little easier than it is. It's it's hard. I remember having a conversation back in my Striker days with one of the VP GMs of a business unit, and he was like, well, this would be a great gig if it weren't for the people in the P&L. And like, I reflect on that like now sometimes, because that's a good chunk of what I do. And leading a business is good stewardship of the P&L. And, you know, you can have a great month of sales, but you can, you know, whittle it all away with not managing your expenses. You have to play offense and defense, right? As well as people, investing in people, handling issues with people, in the fun conversations with people, of growing and developing them. But I've definitely, I think at certain points, learning the business, underestimated the complexity of it all. One thing I think is really cool, but Chick-fil-A humbly doesn't talk about a lot, is just like the quality of our food. I mean, it's complex. We get 5 or 6 truck deliveries a week of all our, you know, dry goods and stuff. We get fresh produce 5 days a week. We prepare a lot of that stuff in-house ourselves. Like this isn't like frozen food, you know, so it's complex. There's like moving perishable inventory. You've got to manage that well. There's a lot of people. I mean, we have close to 120 employees on the roster. We just certainly don't like have that many on the clock at a given time, but it's complex to schedule them and like, you know, train them and set clear expectations and building those processes. So I feel like we're in this state now of refinement. The business is up and running. A lot of things are going well. But now we're like making adjustments. We're really seeing like what needs to be better. And so it's definitely, I think I underestimated some of those things.
How about personal growth? How have you grown over the last year or so?
It's a great point. You know, we were talking about StrengthsFinder earlier. Achiever and competition are 2 of my other strengths in my top 5. So I remember being at Striker, and we had a guy from overseas that was also doing like training in that season of I was also doing training work, and he like looked at my top 5 because we used to put him on your cubicle or your desk or whatever, and he's like, you're really scary. When he looked at my strengths, I'm like, oh, thank you. Okay. I don't
scary
think I
just
am,
by
but
looking at your strengths.
Yeah. He's
Nice.
like the achiever, the competition, the discipline, the focus. He's like, hey, you're scary. But
You're a quiet assassin.
I guess. I don't know. But I just like the natural tendency is to like, I have broad shoulders. I just do. And I can do a lot and take on a lot. I can get a lot more done than people in a shorter amount of time. But that's dangerous in what I'm doing now. So like I've had to look at where I can step back, look at where I can, and I love, you know, Brielle, our executive director, is like, even last week she was challenging me on like, you're doing too much. Let me do that. Let me, you know, update that agenda and let me report the metrics to you. It will help me learn more about that. It's like, okay, yeah, you're right. You know, like, thank you. And I love the relationship we have because she can hold me accountable to things like that and call me out. You know, I've never had really like an assistant before, but I have an assistant now, and like, it's like, hey, like, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And so like, that requires some letting go. And so I think that's definitely like a part of my growth. I think the other part of it is like being willing to like make an investment for the future that like hurts a little bit now. You know, we've taken on a couple of projects. We've made some investments that have hurt profitability and my own income in a certain month or quarter. But I think it will pay dividends in the future. I don't know yet, but it's like, you have to be willing. And that's hard, you know, and especially in this season of like higher costs and higher, you know, our wages are higher, and just, it's tough, but it's like, okay, I think this is the right investment. Let's make a strategic bet on it. So those are things that I feel like I'm hopefully growing in, and learning in. So
do you think, Tim, is that changed in your role now because there's just more on the line, right? This is your business. You know, your family's livelihood's on the line, right? And so maybe there's more of a tendency to like want to hold more because you have more risk. Is that something you've seen yourself change now going into this role, or have you always kind of had that?
That's a good question. I think it's always been there a little bit, but the stakes are higher, definitely. And it's not that I'm like, you know, I sleep pretty well most nights because I'm tired from working hard and chasing kids. So it's not like I'm losing sleep a lot, but yeah, I think the other thing is just like boundaries and like managing your own stress too. Like, you know, I'm a little bit out of sync with like working out, but trying to maintain some kind of routine there. And then just like managing your stress. I mean, I went, again, being vulnerable, I went and, you know, saw my doctor and talked about some stress stuff I was experiencing. Much better now, but early part of the year. And he kind of goes, he's like, oh, Chick-fil-A. He's like, well, I mean, I'm sure that thing kind of just runs itself. And I'm like, then why am I here? Why am I sitting here, right? But
that's kind of what you think, right? You think franchise, you think the playbook, culture set, process is set, food is set, menu set, location set.
Sure.
It's all it's all
customers love it.
Customers love
it.
It's
Show
all,
up.
Right. Well, I'm not going to name the competitive franchise, but I have 2 or 3 leaders that I just adore and think really highly of, and they're key members of our team that worked for a different food franchise. And I can tell you, like, they're still befuddled by like the fact that I'm like there and hands-on a fair amount, because like in this model, typically, like in our market, we have a competitor that like a holding company owns 26 of this competitor, right? And so like they don't know their people. They don't, like, they're just hiring GMs and putting them in there, right? And like they're not there. They don't know. And so like that's local ownership I believe it's a huge difference in Chick-fil-A. Now some of it is like we have the volume to command, right? So like there are advantages that we've been blessed with, but like it's so much different. Like, this mystery entity owning 26 versus Tim. He owns the location. We know what he expects. Sometimes he's here, sometimes he's not here, but we know him. We have a relationship with him. He would be disappointed if we weren't doing this. And the expectations are clear, right? So there's a difference in the model, but I think that's true in just any business, right? I think, sometimes you hear like passive income and, the absentee owner and things like that. Like, it sounds great, but that comes at a cost. It may not be a financial cost, but like, you gotta have a pulse.
Passive income. You hear everybody say that. It sounds great.
Sounds great.
But would you really have like a meaningful life? You're an achiever and you're sitting back and you're sitting on the beach 24/7 with passive income.
I just don't, and I don't mean to go spiritual, but like, I don't think like God designed us that way. Like, I think work is a good thing. It's a part of our character. It's a part of developing us. And like, again, like it has its headaches having a younger workforce, but like, teaching those lessons to, the 16 to 22-year-old in what we do is like, I hope that they someday like look back fondly on what we did and say, yeah, even if it was hard, like I learned a lot at Chick-fil-A. And I believe our brand has value on a resume, right? If somebody, this individual I was talking about that got into nursing school, like I know she talked about it because we talked about her interviews, and like, she's like, well, yeah, like I manage 15 to 20 people on the clock and it's high pressure. And we set a record hour and I had to deal with this guest that was angry and I had to fix an issue. Like,
it's great.
She's head and shoulders above her peers in that nursing interview. That's awesome.
Between that experience and then just the culture, right? When you're in a culture, a high performing culture organization, you'll take that with you to wherever you go next,
totally.
Right? Because you won't allow yourself to dip down to something less than that. Once you've experienced that, you're not going to be like, okay, now like let's go work and not perform, and you won't be there long, right? You're going to you're going to identify with. So that's great that you're establishing that.
Yeah,
it's cool. What's the favorite term at Chick-fil-A that's like way overused when you're talking to management, or like there's got to be some term or metric that you guys follow every month that's way overused? What's that?
That's
term?
funny. Well, so there's a word that's like, I think it's like a bad word at my house now, but like when the team communicates, two-way communication is important, right? So if you're like on the line and you're preparing food, you've got to, communicate with the breader and the guys that are, because we hand bread our chicken and stuff, like there has to be good communication of, that you heard what I said. So like the word is heard. Like you'll call back and say like, I need this, or I'm at half of this, or, whatever. And they're supposed to say heard, is like a response. It's an acknowledgement that I heard what you said and I got your message and I'm going to act on what you did. So the intent of it is good, but like I find myself saying it like all the time. Like someone will like be like, hey, like this just happened. I'm like, heard, and my wife is like, you are not allowed to say that at home. So like it's so, like
that's
so
a good one to use with
funny.
your kids. I got
yeah. Daniel's like, heard. Yeah.
My 4-year-old's dad. It's like heard. I'm still doing something else. That's funny.
But like we have. It's a blessing and a curse, but we call it CEM, like Customer Experience Monitor. And so our guests, are asked to survey us. They're offered a free sandwich, periodically to do that, which is a great reward. And we'd love to share that and point that out. But, those scores are hard. They're not like most of them are really good, but like they're not good for my spirit sometimes because, John Acuff, the author, if you guys ever read his stuff, I love his books, but he talks about like critics math. Right. So like his formula is like 1,000 compliments plus 1 complaint equals 1 complaint. Is critics math. Right. And I struggle with that a lot. I think it's maybe caring too much kind of thing. But in our business, like that's a thing, right? Like we, sometimes people are trying to take advantage of us to get free stuff, and maybe the complaint is real or not real. Other times, like we made a mistake. We do, 1,200 to 1,600 to 2,000 transactions in a given day, depending on the day of the week and how busy it is. Like we're gonna mess up a couple every day. But the important thing is we talk about second mile service at Chick-fil-A is like, what do we do with it? So it's not like, oh, Justin, we missed your fry. Here's a fry. It's like, no, we apologize. Here's a fry, and here's a be our guest card to come back and see us again. Here's a cookie, like something unexpected to correct the situation and delight the customer. And so but sometimes you hear those harsh comments, or you see the scores that feel unfair, and you're just like it grinds at you. And so CEM is kind of like an acronym, I guess, or a metric that it's important. It does matter, but it also grinds your gears a little bit. Maybe it's a little overused. So.
Got it. No, it's good. And then when you acquired, the part of this was acquiring the franchise, right? Mm-hmm. So going through the quote unquote M&A process, mm-hmm. and that sounds like it was a pretty lengthy process for you, but when you kind of go through, when you think about contracts and negotiation and closing the deal, what was maybe something you had no idea about before that you had to learn to get this thing across the line?
Yeah, I think in franchising, there's lots of different regulations by state as well. So it was educating myself not just on every franchise is required to have an FDD, like a franchise disclosure document about revenues and average revenue and owner operators in the system, how many there are, turnover. There's a whole host of things that they're required to disclose to you so that you can do some of that due diligence, kind of like signing an NDA. I mean, then there is an NDA. And so educating myself not only on Chick-fil-A's, but some others as well. Expressing interest was really valuable. And then I think the other thing that this was advised to me by a friend named Keith Hopkins, who kind of does fundraising consulting and capital campaigns for nonprofits. I had a chance to work with him at the Kalamazoo Gospel Mission, but he does a lot of viability kind of surveys of hey, we're thinking about a project. Help us understand if the project will get funded and how. And he's a big proponent and kind of taught me this skill of ask a bunch of people the same set of 5 questions, because you're going to get consistency of themes across those 15, 20 people you interviewed. So that was a part of what I did, is kind of trying to build those relationships and ask them the same 4 or 5 things to see how different people answered the same question. So there were those trends of fit, and am I thinking about all of this in the right way, and stuff like that. So
last question, Tim. So you've lived in Kalamazoo, you've lived in, now you're living in Grand Rapids. So you've mm-hmm. surrounded most of West Michigan. So is there a place, either, a restaurant, activity, you name it, what's the place that's off the beaten path that maybe you, your wife, your family like to go to that we should all know about in West Michigan?
Well, that's great. Something that's I think special to her family, from both her grandparents and now her parents, some of their aunts and uncles, is they have kind of a family spot out in Bridgman, Michigan. So if you're headed west on 94, mm-hmm. kind of tracing the coast on your way to Chicago, exit 16 is Bridgman, exit 12 is Sawyer. That area is really cool. If you've never spent time out there in kind of the Michiana area of Lake Michigan. South Haven is really cool too, but obviously much busier, and Bridgman's just a little quieter. It's a great respite. The Waco Beach in that area is just super cool, and I feel blessed to be able to. Yeah, WEKO. So Warren Dunes is out there as well, but there's just, it's a neat spot, a little less busy, and we love to kind of retreat there throughout the summer. So
it's a good time to talk about beaches, as we
head into the winter.
We'll be ready on the other side.
True. So highly recommend Bridgman. It's a great area.
That's great.
So
awesome. Thanks a lot, Tim. It's great to see you.
This was really fun. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank Doug, and thank you guys for what you do with Acquire, and that was definitely a really cool learning opportunity for me. That again, I think I look at all these mile markers on the journey. Definitely was one that helped me learn a lot about the process, about what was right for me, and thinking through, what this might look like. And so I hope many others take advantage of the learning opportunity, because it was something that was good for me. So
awesome to see more people buying companies. So great to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good weekend.